Welcome to today's exploration of one of history's most pivotal figures. Picture this. It's the Ides of March 44 BCE in the theater of Pompey. A man lies bleeding on the marble floor, 23 stab wounds marking the end of a life that had already changed the world forever. As Gaius Julius Caesar draws his final breath, his assassins believe they've saved the Roman Republic. Instead, they've sealed its doom. But how did one man's life and death transform an entire civilization? How did a minor patrician from a declining family become so powerful that his very name would become synonymous with absolute rule for millennia to come? The story of Julius Caesar isn't just about conquest and assassination. It is about the death of one world and the birth of another. Tonight, we journey back to a Rome on the brink of transformation, where political corruption runs rampant, where slaves outnumber citizens, and where the Mediterranean world trembles before Roman legions. We'll witness Caesar's rise from a debt-ridden young politician to the master of the known world. We'll stand beside him as he conquers Gaul, crosses the Rubicon, and reshapes the very foundations of Roman society. This isn't just ancient history. Caesar's innovations in government, law, calendar reform, and imperial administration created templates that would influence Western civilization for 2,000 years. His story reveals how individual ambition can collide with historical forces to create seismic change, forever altering the course of human civilization. Chapter 1. The Republic in Crisis. The year is 100 BCE, and Rome stands at the pinnacle of Mediterranean power. Yet beneath the marble facades and triumphant processions, the Republic bleeds from 1,000 wounds. In the narrow streets of the Suburra, Rome's most notorious slum, a child named Gaius Julius Caesar takes his first breath in a world already marked for transformation. His family, though patrician, has seen better days. Their ancient bloodline counts for little when creditors come calling. Roman Caesar's youth is a civilization consuming itself. The traditional Roman virtues of duty, honor, and service to the state have withered under the corrupting influence of vast wealth flowing in from conquered territories. Senators who once lived modestly on their farms now command palace estates worked by thousands of slaves. The citizen soldiers who built Rome's empire have been replaced by landless proletarians who serve for pay rather than patriotism. The Forum Romanum, once the beating heart of republican government, has become a stage for increasingly violent political theater. Traditional institutions stirring under pressures they were never designed to handle. The consulship, meant to provide balanced leadership for a city-state, now governs an empire spanning 3 continents. The Senate, originally a council of respected elders, has become a playground for ambitious millionaires who purchase influence with Egyptian gold and Spanish silver. Violence stalks the streets with increasing frequency. The brothers Gracchus had already fallen victim to political murder, their attempts at land reform drowning in senatorial blood. Marius and Sulla waged their civil wars with unprecedented brutality, prescription lists condemning hundreds of Rome's elite to death and confiscation. The old Roman way compromise negotiation. Respect for tradition crumbles before the harsh realities of imperial governance. Into this chaos, young Caesar observes and learns. His family connections place him in proximity to power. His Aunt Julia marries Marius, making Caesar nephew to one of Rome's most feared generals. But proximity to power means proximity to danger. When Sulla achieves dominance, Caesar finds himself targeted for his family connections. The future dictator faces a choice: flee Rome or risk death. Characteristically, Caesar chooses a third option. He uses charm, connections, and calculated audacity to survive. The teenage Caesar who emerges from this crucible already displays the qualities that will remake Rome. He possesses an aristocrat's sense of entitlement, wedded to a populist's understanding of mob psychology. He combines intellectual brilliance with physical courage, political cunning with military genius. Most importantly, He grasps what many of his contemporaries miss. The Roman Republic is dying, and whoever shapes its successor will control the future of the Western world. Caesar's early career unfolds against a backdrop of escalating crisis. Spartacus leads the greatest slave rebellion in Roman history. His army of gladiators and agricultural workers defeating legion after legion before finally falling to Crassus. Pirates control the Mediterranean, making a mockery of Roman naval power until Pompey sweeps them from the seas in a brilliant campaign. Mithridates of Pontus challenges Roman dominance in Asia Minor, requiring years of warfare to subdue. Each crisis reveals the same fundamental problem. Rome's republican institutions cannot govern an empire. The annual consulship provides insufficient continuity for long-term planning. The divided authority between magistrates creates confusion and conflict. The citizen assemblies, designed for a city-state, cannot represent the interests of millions of subjects across 3 continents. Young Caesar watches these failures with calculating eyes. While others bemoan the loss of republican virtue or call for return to ancestral customs, Caesar sees opportunity. The old system is broken beyond repair, but from its ruins, a visionary leader might build something greater. This insight will drive every major decision of his career, from his earliest political alliances to his final crossing of the Rubicon. The stage is set for Caesar's entry into public life, where his unique combination of talents will collide with the forces of history to produce changes that will echo through the ages. Chapter 2. The Young Politician. Caesar's entry into Roman politics comes through the traditional cursus honorum, but from the beginning, he refuses to play by conventional rules. At 24, he secures his first major appointment, Flamen Dialis, High Priest of Jupiter, a position that should have guaranteed him a quiet, prestigious career focused on religious duties. Instead, Caesar uses the office to build networks and study the manipulation of religious law for political advantage. His first major crisis becomes his first triumph. When Sulla demands Caesar divorce his wife Cornelia, daughter of his enemy Cinna, most young men would comply immediately. Caesar refuses, risking his life to maintain a marriage that brings him no political advantage, but demonstrates his loyalty to personal commitments. This defiance, combined with pressure from influential relatives, forces Sulla to back down, giving Caesar his first taste of how boldness can overcome superior force. The young patrician's financial situation remains precarious, but Caesar transforms debt from weakness into weapon. Rather than live within his modest means like a proper Roman gentleman, he borrows vast sums to finance increasingly spectacular public entertainments. His games and gladiatorial shows build name recognition among the Roman masses while establishing him as a patron worth courting among suppliers, contractors, and entertainers. Caesar's rhetorical skills become legendary throughout Rome. In the law courts, his prosecutions of corrupt governors showcase both his legal acumen and his commitment to justice, qualities that resonate with ordinary citizens fed up with senatorial corruption. His defense of accused criminals demonstrates loyalty to friends and clients. Most importantly, his speeches reveal a master psychologist who understands how to move audiences through appeals to their deepest fears and desires. The conspiracy of Catiline provides Caesar with his first opportunity to demonstrate political genius. As praetor, Caesar finds himself caught between his populous base, which sympathizes with Catiline's program of debt relief and land redistribution, and the senatorial establishment, which demands harsh suppression of the conspiracy. Lesser politicians would have chosen sides and alienated half the city. Caesar crafts a middle path supporting punishment for the conspirators while opposing their execution without trial. This position allows Caesar to satisfy the people's desire for justice, while positioning himself as a defender of constitutional procedure against Cato's bloodthirsty extremism. When Cicero's speeches expose the conspiracy's extent, Caesar gracefully shifts his position, demonstrating the pragmatic flexibility that will characterize his entire career. The crisis establishes Caesar as a serious political force who combines principal positions with tactical sophistication. Caesar's partnerships during this period reveal his strategic thinking. His alliance with Crassus, Rome's richest man, provides the financial resources necessary for political advancement. His friendship with Pompey, Rome's greatest general, offers military credibility and popular appeal. These relationships require careful management. Both men possess egos as large as their achievements, and their mutual rivalry threatens any coalition including both. The young politician's personal life becomes increasingly scandalous and increasingly useful. His affair with Servilia, mother of his future assassin Brutus, provides access to one of Rome's most influential families. His rumored relationship with Cleopatra's predecessor on the Egyptian throne demonstrates his international connections. His marriages first to Cornelia, then to Pompeia, finally to Calpurnia create webs of obligation and alliance that extend his influence throughout the Roman elite. Caesar's spending reaches legendary proportions. His aedileship bankrupts him completely as he stages games of unprecedented magnificence, including the first beast hunts featuring African elephants and the largest gladiatorial contests in Roman history. Traditional senators mutter about vulgar excess, but the Roman people remember who gave them the greatest entertainment they've ever seen. This calculated popularity pays dividends when Caesar seeks election as Pontifex Maximus, Rome's highest religious office. Running against two senior consulars in what should be an impossible contest, Caesar stakes everything on a single roll of the dice. On election morning, he tells his mother he'll return home as Pontifex Maximus or not at all, exile being preferable to the humiliation of defeat. His victory shocks the establishment and confirms his status as a political force who can mobilize popular opinion against senatorial tradition. The office of Pontifex Maximus provides Caesar with a platform independent of annual magistracies and immune from prosecution. More importantly, it grants him authority over the religious calendar that governs all public business. This power will prove crucial in his later conflicts with the Senate, allowing him to manipulate the timing of elections and legislative sessions through religious technicalities. By his 40th birthday, Caesar has established himself as one of Rome's most formidable politicians. His debts are staggering, his reputation scandalous, his enemies numerous and powerful. Yet his popularity with the masses is unshakable, his oratorical skills unmatched, his political instincts unerring. The stage is set for his next great gamble, the pursuit of a provincial command that will either make or break his career. Chapter 3. The First Triumvirate. In the shadows behind Rome's marble columns, three men meet to divide the world among themselves. The year is 60 BCE, and the Republic faces its greatest internal threat, not from foreign enemies or slave rebellions, but from its own most successful citizens. Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus forge an alliance so secret that historians will debate its very existence, yet so powerful that it reshapes the Mediterranean world. Pompey returned from his eastern campaigns covered in glory, but frustrated by senatorial obstinacy. The conqueror of Mithridates and reorganizer of Asia Minor seeks two simple rewards: ratification of his administrative arrangements in the conquered territories and land grants for his veteran soldiers. The Senate, jealous of his success and fearful of his popularity, blocks both requests with procedural delays and petty amendments. Crassus, having saved the Republic from Spartacus's slave army, finds his achievements overshadowed by Pompey's more glamorous victories. The richest man in Rome commands respect for his wealth, but craves the military glory that defines Roman greatness. His rivalry with Pompey has paralyzed Roman politics for years, as each man's supporters work to prevent the other's advancement. Caesar sees opportunity in their mutual frustration. Returning from his praetorship in Spain with enough plunder to pay his most pressing debts, he faces a crucial choice. He can either celebrate a triumph for his victories over Spanish tribes or return immediately to campaign for the consulship. Roman law forbids him to do both. Triumphing generals must remain outside the city limits, while consular candidates must register their candidacy personally in the forum. The Senate has refusal to grant Caesar an exemption from this technicality reveals their fear of his growing power. Led by Cato the Younger, the Optimates faction prefers to force Caesar into political exile rather than risk his election to Rome's highest office. Their short-sightedness drives Caesar into the arms of their greatest enemies. The three-way alliance Caesar proposes offers each partner what he desires most. Pompey will receive ratification of his eastern settlements and land for his veterans. Crassus will gain a consulship for his protege and profitable contracts for his construction companies. Caesar will win election as consul and secure a lucrative provincial command. Each man brings essential resources: Pompey's veterans, Crassus's money, Caesar's political skills. The arrangement remains so secret that even Cicero, Rome's greatest gossip and most astute political observer, fails to recognize its existence until its consequences become undeniable. The triumvirs communicate through intermediaries, meet in private villas outside Rome, and coordinate their actions through seemingly independent agents. Their success depends on maintaining the illusion that the Republic's traditional institutions continue to function normally. Caesar's consulship reveals the alliance's true power. When his colleague Bibulus attempts to obstruct Caesar's legislation through traditional means, religious objections, tribunician vetoes, procedural delays, Caesar simply ignores these obstacles. His laws pass through the citizen assemblies despite senatorial opposition, backed by Pompey's veterans and Crassus's clients. Bibulus finds himself physically barred from the forum, leading wits to joke that Rome is governed by the consulship of Julius and Caesar rather than Caesar and Bibulus. The land law that emerges from this conflict represents Caesar's political genius at its finest. The legislation provides Pompey as veterans with farms carved from Ager Publicus and land purchased with the wealth Pompey brought back from his eastern conquests. This solution satisfies the veterans' demands without confiscating private property, funds the purchases through foreign plunder rather than Roman taxes, and creates a new class of citizen farmers loyal to the triumvirs. Caesar's daughter Julia becomes the human symbol of the alliance when she marries Pompey, despite their 20-year age difference. The marriage, initially seen as purely political, develops into genuine affection that helps maintain the partnership through subsequent crises. Julia's charm and intelligence make her an effective intermediary between her father and husband, smoothing over conflicts that might otherwise destroy their cooperation. The Senate's response to the triumvirate's dominance grows increasingly desperate. Cato's theatrical gestures, filibustering speeches that last entire days, dramatic displays of Republican virtue fail to mobilize effective opposition. Cicero's attempts to split the alliance through rhetorical brilliance and personal appeals prove equally futile. The Optimates' fundamental problem remains unchanged. They offer no solutions to the Republic's structural problems, only obstruction of reforms that might address them. The triumvir's success in dominating Roman politics has profound consequences for the Mediterranean world. Caesar's consulship establishes precedents that future strongmen will exploit: the use of force against constitutional opposition, the coordination of private armies with political ambitions, the treatment of the Senate as an advisory body rather than a governing institution. The alliance as ultimate achievement lies in demonstrating that the Republic's traditional checks and balances cannot contain the ambitions of truly determined individuals. The mixed constitution that had served Rome for centuries proves inadequate for governing an empire where successful generals command more loyalty than abstract institutions, and where wealth flows in quantities that dwarf traditional republican restraints. As Caesar prepares to depart for Gaul, The foundations of the Roman Republic crumble beneath the weight of its own success. The triumvirate has provided a temporary solution to governmental paralysis, but at the cost of abandoning constitutional government. The precedent they establish will soon inspire imitators who lack their restraint and skill. Chapter 4. Conquest of Gaul. The Rhine marks the boundary between civilization and barbarism. Or so Romans believe when Caesar crosses into Gaul in 58 BCE. Behind him lies a world of marble temples, paved roads, and written laws. Ahead stretches a land of dark forests, tribal warfare, and human sacrifice. When Caesar returns 8 years later, he will have extended Roman power to the Atlantic Ocean and transformed both Gaul and Rome forever. Caesar's proconsular command encompasses Gallia Narbonensis, Rome's existing province in southern France, and Illyricum across the Adriatic. These assignments offer opportunities for profit and glory, but hardly seem to justify the massive debts Caesar incurred to secure them. Everything changes when the Helvetii, a Celtic tribe inhabiting modern Switzerland, begin a mass migration across Gaul toward the Atlantic coast. The Helvetes movement threatens Roman allies and trading partners throughout Gaul. More importantly for Caesar, it provides the perfect pretext for intervention. Roman law and custom require magistrates to defend allies and protect Roman interests, giving Caesar legal justification for what might otherwise appear as naked aggression. His decision to block the Helvetii migration at the Rhine River commits Rome to a conflict that will last nearly a decade. Caesar's first major battle reveals the qualities that will make him one of history's greatest generals. At Bibracte, facing a Helvetii army of nearly 400,000 warriors, Caesar demonstrates the tactical flexibility and personal courage that will become his trademarks. When his initial deployment fails to break Celtic resistance, he personally leads a flanking attack that turns near defeat into decisive victory. The Roman military machine that Caesar inherits from Marius proves ideally suited for Gallic warfare. Professional legionaries, armed with pila and gladi, possess training and discipline far superior to tribal warriors. Roman engineering capabilities, bridge building, siege warfare, fortification, give Caesar strategic options unavailable to his enemies. Most importantly, the legion's logistical sophistication allows them to campaign year-round, while Celtic armies must disperse for harvest and winter. Caesar's literary genius manifests itself in his commentary, the annual dispatches he sends to Rome describing his campaigns. Written in spare, elegant Latin, these reports present Caesar's actions as necessary responses to barbarian aggression and Roman duty. Their third-person narrative style creates an impression of objective historical recording, while actually crafting one of antiquity's most effective propaganda campaigns. Each year brings new challenges and new victories. The Germanic chieftain Ariovistus threatens Gallic tribes allied with Rome, forcing Caesar to cross the Rhine and demonstrate Roman power beyond traditionally accepted boundaries. The Belgae Confederation in northern Gaul mobilizes against Roman expansion, requiring Caesar to deploy his full diplomatic and military skills to prevent a general uprising. The siege of Avaricum showcases Roman engineering at its most impressive. Facing a hilltop fortress protected by marshes and defended by desperate Gauls, Caesar's legions build a massive earthwork ramp that allows their siege engines to breach walls previously thought impregnable. The 20-day siege becomes a textbook example of Roman methodical warfare overcoming Celtic heroic resistance. Caesar's invasion of Britain captures Roman imagination like no other exploit of the Gallic Wars. The mysterious island beyond the ocean, that vast water barrier Romans considered the edge of the world, has long fascinated Mediterranean peoples. Caesar's successful channel crossings in 55 and 54 BCE proved that Roman courage and engineering can overcome any obstacle, even the limits of the known world. The Germanic campaigns across the Rhine serve similar propaganda purposes while demonstrating Caesar's strategic vision. By building bridges across rivers, Germanic tribes considered impassable and burning villages deep in the German interior, Caesar establishes Rome's ability to strike anywhere at will. These expeditions terrorize potential enemies while showcasing Roman engineering capabilities to friends and foes alike. Vercingetorix emerges as Caesar's greatest opponent during the final phase of the Gallic Wars. This charismatic Arverni chieftain unites Gallic tribes in a coordinated resistance that nearly succeeds in expelling Rome from central Gaul. His strategy of avoiding pitched battles while denying Roman army supplies through scorched earth tactics proves initially effective against Caesar's conventional approach. The siege of Gergovia represents Caesar's most serious defeat in Gaul. Vercingetorix's defensive position proves too strong for direct assault, while his political skills begin attracting tribes previously loyal to Rome. Caesar's withdrawal from Gergovia, his first strategic retreat in 7 years of campaigning, encouraged rebellion throughout central Gaul and threatens to undo all his previous conquests. Alesia becomes the defining moment of the Gallic Wars. Vercingetorix's decision to concentrate his forces in this hilltop fortress allows Caesar to deploy Roman siegecraft at maximum effectiveness. The double circumvallation Caesar constructs around Alesia walls, facing both inward toward the besieged city and outward against relieving armies, represents military engineering at its most ambitious. The siege's climax pits Caesar's tactical genius against Vercingetorix's strategic vision. Facing simultaneous attacks from within Alesia and from a massive relief army, Caesar leads a cavalry charge that breaks Gallic resistance and ends the war. Vercingetorix's surrender saves his followers from slaughter, but condemns their leader to 6 years of captivity before his ritual execution in Caesar's triumph. Caesar's conquest of Gaul transforms both victor and vanquished. The Celtic territories become Roman provinces, generating vast wealth through taxation, trade, and exploitation. Gallic warriors fill Roman auxiliary units, while Gallic nobles adopt Roman customs and education. The integration of Gaul doubles Rome's territory and establishes precedents for incorporating barbarian peoples into Roman civilization. For Caesar personally, the Gallic Wars provide everything he needs to challenge the established order in Rome: military veterans, fanatically loyal to their commander, wealth to finance political campaigns, and a reputation for invincibility that intimidates enemies and inspires supporters. The provincial nobody who departed Rome in debt returns as master of the ancient world's greatest military machine. Chapter 5. Crossing the Rubicon. A small river winds through the plains of northern Italy, marking the sacred boundary where provincial commands end and Roman law begins. In January 49 BCE, Caesar stands on its northern bank with a single legion, facing the greatest decision in Western history. Behind him stretch 8 years of Gallic conquest and unprecedented military glory. Ahead lies either the consulship he rightfully deserves or civil war that will destroy the Republic forever. The crisis builds slowly through the final years of Caesar's Gallic command. His enemies in the Senate, led by Cato and emboldened by Pompey's growing jealousy, systematically work to destroy him through legal technicalities. They refuse to extend his command or allow him to stand for consul in absentia, forcing him to choose between returning to Rome as a private citizen vulnerable to prosecution or maintaining his army in defiance of direct senatorial orders. The first triumvirate crumbles as personal relationships fracture under political pressure. Julia's death in childbirth severs the strongest bond between Caesar and Pompey, while Crassus's destruction at Carrhae removes the third partner whose mediation might have preserved their alliance. Pompey's marriage to Cornelia, daughter of Caesar's enemy Metellus Scipio, symbolizes his drift toward the Optimates faction. Caesar's attempts at compromise reveal both his political sophistication and his opponent's intransigence. He offers to dismiss all but 2 legions if permitted to retain his command until the consular elections. When this proposal fails, He suggests laying down all commands simultaneously with Pompey. The Senate's rejection of even these minimal face-saving gestures demonstrates their determination to destroy him completely. The final negotiations collapse into farce as Cato filibusters any discussion of compromise, while Pompey issues increasingly ultimatum-like demands. The consul Marcellus's symbolic presentation of a sword to Pompey transforms a political dispute into military confrontation. The Senate, as passage of the Senatus Consultum Ultimum authorizing magistrates to defend the state by any means necessary, represents a declaration of war against Caesar and his supporters. Caesar's decision to cross the Rubicon emerges from years of careful calculation rather than momentary passion. His Gallic victories have created a military machine superior to any force Pompey can immediately assemble. His political support among the urban plebs and rural veterans provides a base that Optimate's propaganda cannot erode. Most importantly, his assessment of Roman politics convinces him that compromise will only delay inevitable conflict. The famous words, "Alia iacta est," the die is cast, may be apocryphal, but they capture Caesar's understanding that his choice commits Rome to civil war. By maintaining his army beyond its legal termination date and leading it across the sacred boundary, Caesar abandons any pretense of constitutional legitimacy. He becomes a rebel against the Roman state, justifying his actions only through success. Caesar's early campaigns demonstrate the strategic brilliance that made him master of Gaul. Instead of advancing directly on Rome, he secures his base by capturing key towns throughout northern Italy. His clemency toward defeated enemies, pardoning captured senators, sparing surrendered cities, restoring confiscated property, contrasts sharply with the prescriptions that characterized earlier civil wars. The speed of Caesar's advance catches his enemies completely unprepared. Pompey's boast that he need only stamp his foot to fill Italy with legions proves hollow when faced with Caesar's veterans and the population's war weariness. City after city opens its gates rather than endure siege, while Pompey's hastily recruited forces prove no match for battle-hardened Gallic war veterans. Pompey's strategic withdrawal to Brundisium represents sound military thinking, consolidating forces in defensible positions while using time and space to wear down Caesar's momentum. The plan's execution, however, reveals fundamental weaknesses in the Optimates' political position. Their flight from Rome abandons the symbolic heart of their legitimacy, while their retreat to Greece suggests they value foreign allies over Roman citizens. Caesar's entry into Rome after Pompey's departure demonstrates his political genius. Rather than seizing power as a tyrant, he maintains republican forms while ensuring real authority remains in his hands. His respect for religious ceremonies and constitutional procedures provides reassurance to nervous neutrals while positioning him as defender of traditional Roman values against senators who fled rather than face popular judgment. The dramatic confrontation at the treasury reveals Caesar's psychological mastery. When the tribune Metellus attempts to prevent Caesar from accessing state funds Caesar's threat to kill him. And young man, that it's harder for me to say this than to do it, combines personal mess with political calculation. Metellus's immediate capitulation demonstrates Caesar's ability to project power through controlled intimidation. Caesar's clemency toward captured enemies becomes a defining characteristic of his civil war strategy. Unlike Marius and Sulla, who use prescription lists to terrorize opponents, Caesar pardons defeated senators and restores their property. This policy serves both practical and propaganda purposes, reducing resistance by offering amnesty, while positioning Caesar as merciful liberator rather than vengeful conqueror. The broader Italian campaign reveals how thoroughly Caesar has transformed Roman military culture. His legions fight with unprecedented loyalty, not merely for pay or glory, but for a commander who shares their dangers and rewards their service. The personal bonds forged during 8 years of Gallic warfare create an army more devoted to Caesar than to the Roman state itself. Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon represents more than military insubordination. It marks the moment when personal loyalty displaces constitutional authority as the basis of Roman power. The precedent he establishes will haunt the Republic's remaining years as ambitious generals realize that well-led armies can override legal constraints and popular assemblies. The die-cast of the Rubicon's banks condemns the Roman Republic to death while birthing the imperial system that will govern the Mediterranean world for centuries. Caesar's gamble succeeds beyond his wildest dreams, but its success ensures that Rome will never again be governed by the mixed constitution that had served her for 500 years. Chapter 6: Civil War and Dictatorship. The ancient world watches in fascination and horror as Rome tears itself apart. From Spain to Syria, Roman armies clash while the Republic's greatest generals deploy everything they learned conquering barbarians against each other. Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon has unleashed forces that will either destroy Roman civilization or transform it beyond recognition. Pompey's withdrawal to Greece initially appears to be strategic brilliance. The Eastern Mediterranean remains loyal to the conqueror of Mithridates, providing him with vast financial resources and experienced legions. His naval superiority allows him to control maritime trade routes while threatening Caesar's supply lines. Most importantly, time favors the defender. Every month of delay allows Pompey to recruit more troops while Caesar's resources dwindle. Caesar's position seems precarious as he controls Italy but faces enemies on multiple fronts. Pompey's forces gather strength in Greece, while his supporters in Spain threaten Caesar's rear. The Optimates propaganda campaign portrays Caesar as a rebel against legitimate authority, making it difficult for neutrals to support him. Most dangerously, Caesar's clemency toward defeated enemies may encourage further resistance by reducing the costs of opposing him. The Spanish campaign demonstrates Caesar's strategic versatility. Rather than pursuing Pompey immediately, Caesar secures his western flank by confronting Pompeian forces at Ilerda. The campaign showcases Roman engineering as Caesar's legions build bridges, dams, and fortifications to overcome geographical obstacles and enemy advantages. His victory eliminates organized resistance in Spain while freeing veteran legions for the Eastern War. Caesar's return to Rome reveals his political sophistication. Rather than ruling as military dictator, he seeks election as consul through proper constitutional procedures. His brief dictatorship serves only to conduct elections and address immediate crises before he resigns in favor of regular magistracies. This adherence to republican forms provides legitimacy while demonstrating Caesar's respect for traditional institutions. The invasion of Greece represents Caesar's greatest military gamble. Transporting armies across the Adriatic in winter defies conventional strategic wisdom, but Caesar understands that prolonged delay favors his enemies. His successful landing at Dyrrhachium catches Pompey off guard and forces the decisive confrontation both sides have sought to avoid. The siege of Dyrrhachium becomes Caesar's greatest defeat since Gergovia. Pompey's superior position and naval support allow him to withstand Caesar's blockade while launching devastating counterattacks. Caesar's casualties mount alarmingly as his seasoned veterans fall to disease, hunger, and Pompeian sorties. The eventual breakthrough of Caesar's siege lines forces him to abandon the investment and seek battle elsewhere. Phasaelus emerges as the climactic battle of the Civil War. Pompey's army, swollen with eastern levies and Italian refugees, outnumbers Caesar's veterans by nearly 2-to-1. The Optimates' confidence reaches its peak as senators debate the distribution of Caesar's confiscated estates and provincial commands. Victory seems assured for the forces of legitimate authority against the upstart rebel. Caesar's tactical genius shines brightest in moments of greatest peril. Recognizing that Pompey's cavalry superiority threatens his right flank, Caesar conceals a special force of infantry behind his cavalry line. When Pompey's horsemen break through Caesar's mounted troops, they encounter unexpected resistance from legionaries trained specifically in anti-cavalry tactics. The psychological shock of this reversal breaks Pompeian morale and transforms victory into catastrophic defeat. Pompey's flight to Egypt marks the end of his political career and the beginning of Caesar's mastery over the Roman world. The great general, who once commanded unprecedented loyalty, finds himself reduced to seeking asylum from foreign kings. His murder on the Egyptian shore, ordered by Ptolemaic advisors, eager to curry favor with Caesar, eliminates Caesar as greatest rival while denying him the opportunity to display clemency toward a defeated opponent. Caesar's arrival in Alexandria reveals both his political instincts and his personal weaknesses. His affair with Cleopatra provides him with a powerful ally and access to Egyptian wealth, but his involvement in Ptolemaic dynastic disputes nearly costs him his life. The Alexandrian War demonstrates that even Caesar's military genius has limits when deployed in unfamiliar terrain against desperate enemies. The campaigns in Asia Minor and Africa showcase Caesar's ability to inspire loyalty among diverse peoples. His swift victory over Pharnaces at Zela, commemorated in his famous dispatch, Veni, Vici, restores Roman authority in the East while avenging Crassus's defeat. The African campaign against Cato and Scipio requires months of difficult fighting but ultimately eliminates the last major center of senatorial resistance. Cato's suicide at Utica becomes the defining moment of Republican resistance. Rather than accept Caesar's clemency, the Stoic philosopher chooses death over submission to tyranny. His dramatic end reading, Plato's dialogue on the soul's immortality before disemboweling himself, creates a martyr whose memory will haunt Caesar as regime and inspire future republicans. Caesar's fourfold triumph upon returning to Rome represents the pinnacle of Roman ceremonial display. The procession celebrating his victories in Gaul, Egypt, Asia, and Africa demonstrate his mastery over the known world while providing Romans with unprecedented spectacle. Vercingetorix's execution concludes the Celtic chieftain's 6-year captivity and symbolizes Gallic subjugation to Roman power. The dictator's domestic programs reveal his vision for Rome's future. His building projects, new basilicas, theaters, and temples transform the city's physical appearance while providing employment for the urban masses. His citizenship grants to Gallic nobles and Spanish communities extend Roman identity beyond its traditional Italian boundaries. His calendar reform replaces the chaotic republican system with the Julian calendar still used today. Caesar's clemency toward former enemies becomes both his greatest strength and most dangerous weakness. Pardoned senators return to their estates and dignities, but many retain bitter memories of defeat and resentment of Caesar's dominance. The dictator's generosity creates a class of men who owe their positions to his mercy, while despising their dependence on his goodwill. The concentration of power in Caesar's hands fundamentally alters Roman governance. Traditional magistracies continue to exist but serve purely ceremonial functions. The Senate meets regularly, but debates only matters Caesar permits. The citizen assemblies pass laws he proposes, while rejecting none he opposes. Republican institutions survive in form while losing all substance. Caesar's dictatorship establishes precedents that will shape imperial Rome for centuries. His combination of military command with civil authority creates the template future emperors will follow. His integration of provincial peoples into Roman society begins the process that will transform a Mediterranean city-state into a multicultural empire. His administrative innovations, from calendar reform to citizenship extension, prove more durable than his political arrangements. Chapter 7. The Ides of March. The soothsayer's warning echoes through the forum. Beware the Ides of March. Caesar dismisses the prophecy with characteristic confidence. The Ides of March have come. He tells the seer on that fateful morning. Aye, they have come but not yet gone, comes the ominous reply. Within hours, the master of the Roman world lies bleeding on the Senate House floor, victim of a conspiracy that destroys him but fails utterly to restore the Republic. The plot against Caesar emerges from the intersection of personal grievance and Republican ideology. Marcus Brutus, descended from the founder of the Republic and raised in Cato's Stoic philosophy, struggles with conflicting loyalties: gratitude toward Caesar, who pardoned him after Pharsalus and advanced his career; wars with ancestral duty to oppose tyranny. His involvement legitimizes the conspiracy among wavering senators who need moral authority to justify regicide. Gaius Cassius Longinus provides the conspiracy's driving force and practical experience. His military background and bitter resentment of Caesar's dominance make him the natural leader of malcontent senators seeking to restore traditional governance. Cassius understands that successful conspiracy requires broad participation. Isolated assassins become mere murderers, while senatorial consensus creates revolutionary legitimacy. The conspirators' recruitment reveals both the breadth of opposition to Caesar's rule and its fundamental weakness. 60 senators eventually join the plot, but their motives vary wildly. Some genuinely believe in Republican restoration. Others seek personal advancement. Still others simply follow influential friends. This diversity of purpose will prove fatal when the conspirators must govern after Caesar's death. Caesar's behavior in his final months suggests either supreme confidence or unconscious death wish. He dismisses his Spanish bodyguard, claiming that Romans need no protection from fellow Romans. He ignores multiple warnings about threats to his safety, treating conspiracy rumors as products of cowardly imagination. His public appearances become increasingly theatrical, wearing his laurel crown constantly, sitting on a golden throne during Senate meetings, accepting honors that blur the line between divine and mortal. The dictator's most controversial innovations concern his relationship with the gods. His construction of a temple to Venus Genetrix, divine ancestor of the Julian clan, establishes unprecedented personal connections to divinity. His acceptance of a golden statue in the Temple of Quirinus suggests identification with Rome's deified founder. Most provocatively, rumors circulate that Caesar plans to accept formal deification while still living, a step that would fundamentally alter Roman concepts of citizenship and authority. Cleopatra's presence in Rome during Caesar's final months adds an exotic element that scandalized traditional senators. The Egyptian queen's residence across the Tiber and Caesar's villa provides a constant reminder of his Eastern entanglements and un-Roman lifestyle. Her son Caesarion, whether or not actually Caesar's child, represents the possibility of dynastic succession that threatens republican institutions at their core. The conspiracy's final planning takes place in Pompey's theater, where the Senate has been meeting while their traditional building undergoes renovation. The irony is deliberate. Caesar will die in a building dedicated to his greatest rival, beneath a statue of Pompey himself. The conspirators choose the Ides of March because the Senate session scheduled for that day will bring Caesar within reach without requiring them to violate religious sanctuaries or private homes. Portents and warnings multiply as the fatal day approaches. Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, dreams of his death, begging him to stay home. Soothsayers discover ominous signs in sacrificial victims. A magpie carrying a laurel branch is torn apart by other birds in the forum, an obvious metaphor for Caesar's fate. Even nature seems to warn against the approaching catastrophe. The morning of March 15th unfolds like a Greek tragedy where fate overwhelms human will. Caesar initially heeds Calpurnia's pleas and sends word that illness will prevent his attendance at the Senate meeting. The conspirators' carefully laid plans threaten to collapse until Decimus Brutus, one of Caesar's most trusted lieutenants, arrives to escort the dictator personally to the theater of Pompey. Decimus's persuasion reveals the psychological complexity underlying Caesar's assassination. This intimate friend argues that Caesar cannot disappoint the senators who await him, that rumors of cowardice will damage his reputation, that affairs of state require his immediate attention. Caesar, as vanity and sense of duty overcome his wife's fears and his own misgivings, as he departs for his appointment with destiny. The assassination itself unfolds with brutal efficiency. As Caesar takes his seat, the conspirators surround him under pretense of presenting a petition for the recall of Publius Cimber from exile. When Caesar dismisses their request, Tullius Cimber seizes his toga and pulls it from his shoulders, the prearranged signal for attack. Casca strikes first, inflicting a shallow wound that causes Caesar to cry out in pain and surprise. The frenzy that follows transforms distinguished senators into frenzied killers. Each conspirator must strike Caesar to share responsibility for his death, creating a chaotic scene where 23 wounds pierce the dictator's body. Caesar initially fights back, using his stylus as a weapon and crying for help. But the overwhelming numbers and shock of betrayal by trusted friends soon overcome his resistance. The moment that defines Caesar's death comes when he sees Marcus Brutus among his attackers. That too, Brute, whether actually spoken or literary embellishment, captures the personal betrayal that transforms political assassination into family tragedy. Brutus's participation breaks Caesar's will to resist more than any physical wound, and he covers his face with his toga before collapsing at the base of Pompey's statue. The immediate aftermath reveals the conspirators' fatal lack of planning beyond the murder itself. Instead of seizing control of government institutions or mobilizing military support, they stand paralyzed beside Caesar's corpse as panic spreads through the city. Their shouts of liberty and the Republic is restored echo hollowly in empty halls as senators flee and citizens hide in their homes. Marcus Antonius's escape becomes crucial for subsequent events. Caesar's fellow consul and closest remaining ally flees the scene disguised as a slave, avoiding the fate the conspirators had planned for him. His survival ensures that Caesar's supporters retain leadership while the assassins waste precious hours debating their next moves. The delay will prove fatal to their cause. The conspirators march to the capital, waving bloody daggers and calling for popular celebration, demonstrates their complete misunderstanding of Caesar's relationship with the Roman people. Instead of cheering crowds welcoming liberation from tyranny, they encounter shuttered shops and empty streets. The urban masses who benefited from Caesar's largesse feel no gratitude toward his killers. Brutus's speech from the Capitol steps showcases both his noble intentions and political naivety. His philosophical arguments about republican virtue and constitutional restoration fall flat with audiences concerned about practical consequences. Will Caesar's veterans rampage through the city? Will the grain dole continue? Will debts be forgiven as Caesar promised? The conspirators offer no answers to these pressing questions. The discovery of Caesar's will transform public opinion decisively against the assassins. His bequest of gardens to the Roman people and money to every citizen demonstrates generosity that contrasts sharply with the conspirators' sterile constitutional arguments. The reading of these provisions in the Forum generates genuine grief and anger among masses who remember Caesar as entertainment and largesse. Caesar's funeral becomes the turning point where republic restoration becomes impossible. Antony's masterful oration, building on genuine popular affection for the dead dictator, transforms grief into rage and admiration into demands for vengeance. The conspirators' hopes for peaceful transition collapse as mobs hunt them through Rome's streets while Caesar's body burns in the Forum's heart. The Ides of March achieves its immediate objective. Caesar dies and his dictatorship ends. But the larger goal of republican restoration proves impossible when the underlying conditions that created Caesar's dominance remain unchanged. Rome still requires strong leadership to govern its empire. Veterans still demand rewards for service. The masses still expect benefits from successful politicians. The conspiracy's ultimate irony lies in its unintended consequences. By killing Caesar while leaving his system intact, the assassins ensure that power will pass to men less scrupulous and more ruthless than their victim. The civil wars that follow will make Caesar's dictatorship seem mild by comparison, while establishing imperial precedents, more durable than any republican restoration. Chapter 8. The will and testament. Caesar's death creates a power vacuum that multiple claimants rush to fill. But none proves more surprising than an 18-year-old student in Apollonia who learns of his adoption through his great-uncle's will. Gaius Octavius, soon to become Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus, transforms from obscure provincial into master of the Roman world through a combination of inherited advantages, personal brilliance, and ruthless determination that would have impressed his adoptive father. The reading of Caesar's testament shocks both supporters and enemies with its political sophistication. Beyond the public bequests that inflame a popular opinion against the conspirators, the document reveals Caesar's long-term planning for succession. His adoption of Octavian provides legitimacy for continued Caesarian leadership, while his naming of Antony as secondary heir ensures cooperation between his most important political and military lieutenants. Octavian's initial position appears hopeless. A teenager with no military experience, no political connections independent of Caesar, and no personal fortune faces established generals like Antony and Lepidus, who command veteran legions and control state resources. The conspirators dismiss him as irrelevant, while Antony treats him as a useful puppet who can provide legitimacy without threatening real authority. The young Caesar's arrival in Rome demonstrates political instincts that rival his adoptive father's brilliance. Instead of claiming his inheritance immediately, Octavian carefully studies the political situation while building relationships with Caesar's veterans and supporters. His willingness to pay Caesar's bequests from his own resources, borrowing vast sums when Antony refuses to release state funds, wins popular gratitude and demonstrates commitment to his adoptive father's memory. Cicero's return to active politics provides Octavian with an unexpected ally and legitimacy source. The great orator's hatred of Antony blinds him to the dangers of supporting Caesar's heir, while his rhetorical skills give constitutional cover to what amounts to teenage rebellion against lawful authority. The Philippics that demolish Antony's reputation also establish Octavian as the Senate's chosen instrument for destroying Caesar's lieutenant. The formation of the Second Triumvirate represents Octavian's political masterstroke. Recognizing that he lacks the strength to defeat Antony and Lepidus separately, he engineers a reconciliation that grants him equal status with men possessing superior resources and experience. The three-way alliance of Bononia divides the Roman world among the triumvirs while providing legal framework for their extraordinary powers. The prescription lists that follow the triumvirate's formation reveal how completely Caesar's clemency has been abandoned. Where the dictator pardoned enemies and restored their property, his successors compiled death lists targeting hundreds of wealthy Romans whose estates will fund their armies. Cicero's execution symbolizes the Republic's final death, as soldiers silenced the voice that had defended constitutional government for decades. The Battle of Philippi eliminates the last Republican army while establishing Octavian's military credentials. Though Antony's forces bear the heaviest fighting against Brutus and Cassius, Octavian's presence on the battlefield demonstrates his commitment to avenging Caesar's murder. The suicides of the conspiracy's leaders remove organized opposition to triumviral rule, while providing propaganda opportunities for Caesar's heirs. The division of the Roman world after Philippi reflects each triumvir's strengths and weaknesses. Antony receives the wealthy eastern provinces, where his military reputation and personal charisma make him dominant. Lepidus governs Africa, providing him with resources while limiting his independence. Octavian controls Italy and the western provinces, a challenging assignment that requires administrative skill rather than military glory. Antony's relationship with Cleopatra becomes both personal obsession and political catastrophe. The Egyptian queen's wealth and intelligence make her a valuable ally, while their children provide potential heirs to eastern dominions. However, Antony's increasing identification with Hellenistic kingship alienates Roman opinion and provides Octavian with propaganda weapons that prove decisive in their eventual conflict. The Perusian War demonstrates Octavian's growing political sophistication. When Antony's wife Fulvia and brother Lucius rebel against triumviral land distributions, Octavian responds with military efficiency and propaganda brilliance. His siege of Perusia showcases Roman engineering, while his mercy toward defeated enemies contrasts favorably with Antony's harsh treatment of Italian communities. Octavian's marriage to Livia represents both personal attraction and political calculation. His divorce from Scribonia, announced on the day she bears him his only biological child, scandalized traditionalists, but freed him to ally with one of Rome's most influential families. Livia's intelligence and political instincts make her an invaluable partner in the complex maneuvering required to achieve supreme power. The triumvirate's renewal at Tarentum provides only temporary stability as underlying tensions between Octavian and Antony intensify. Their territorial exchanges, Antony surrendering Italian claims in return for Eastern reinforcements, reflect growing division between Roman and Hellenistic spheres of influence. The marriage between Antony and Octavian's sister, Octavia, offers hope for continued cooperation while creating personal stakes in political conflict. Sextus Pompey's naval dominance threatens all triumviral plans by controlling grain shipments to Rome. His fleet's ability to starve the capital demonstrates the Republic's continued vulnerability to determined opponents with superior resources. The Treaty of Misenum, that recognizes Pompey's authority over Sicily and Sardinia, represents a humiliating compromise that each side plans to violate at the first opportunity. Octavian's naval war against Sextus Pompey reveals both his limitations and his determination to overcome them. Initial defeats at sea demonstrate his inexperience with maritime warfare while threatening his position in Rome. His persistence in building new fleets and training crews eventually pays dividends at Naulacus, where Agrippa's tactical innovations give Octavian decisive victory over his last significant rival in the West. The elimination of Lepidus completes Octavian's consolidation of power in the Roman West. When the senior triumvirate attempts to claim Sicily as reward for his participation in the Pompeian War, Octavian's political skills prove superior to his colleagues' military threats. Lepidus's soldiers desert to the younger Caesar, leaving their commander with only the dignity of Pontifex Maximus and forced retirement from active politics. Caesar's will thus proves prophetic in its selection of Octavian as primary heir. The teenager who seemed least likely to succeed among Caesar as potential successors demonstrates political instincts and strategic vision that eliminate all rivals while building the foundation for permanent dominance. His transformation from student to triumvir showcases both individual brilliance and institutional advantages that Caesar's adoption provides. The stage is set for the final confrontation between Caesar's heirs, Octavian representing Roman tradition and Western values, Antony embodying Eastern monarchy and Hellenistic culture. Their conflict will determine not only who rules the Roman world, but what form that rule will take and how Caesar's legacy will be interpreted for future generations. Chapter 9. The Rise of Augustus. The final act of the Roman Republic unfolds across the azure waters of the Aegean as two Roman fleets prepare for battle at Actium. On September 2nd, 31 BCE, the forces of Octavian and Antony meet in a naval engagement that will determine whether Rome's future lies with Mediterranean monarchy or Italian tradition. The victory that emerges from these waters will transform Octavian from junior partner in a failing triumvirate into Augustus, first among Romans and founder of an imperial dynasty. Antony's position in the East had seemed unassailable just years before. His military reputation, Eastern wealth, and alliance with Cleopatra provided resources that dwarfed Octavian's Italian base. The donations of Alexandria, where Antony distributed Eastern kingdoms among his children by the Egyptian queen, demonstrated his ability to reward supporters with territorial grants beyond anything Octavian could offer. Octavian's propaganda campaign against Antony showcases political warfare at its most sophisticated. Rather than attacking Antony directly, which might seem like renewed civil war, Octavian focuses Roman anger on Cleopatra as a foreign queen corrupting Roman virtue. His publication of what he claims is Antony's will, revealing bequests to Caesarion and plans for burial in Alexandria, inflame his Roman xenophobia while questioning Antony's loyalty to his homeland. The oath of loyalty that Octavian administers throughout Italy demonstrates his mastery of constitutional forms. Instead of demanding military service as a triumvir, he presents himself as defending Roman tradition against foreign invasion. This legal fiction allows neutrals to support him without seeming to endorse dictatorship, while positioning his cause as defensive rather than aggressive. The campaign leading to Actium reveals Antony's strategic confusion. His decision to accept naval battle despite Octavian's advantages in ship design and crew training suggests either overconfidence or desperation. Cleopatra's presence with the fleet bringing Egyptian resources, but also providing Octavian with propaganda opportunities, demonstrates how personal relationships complicate political calculations. Agrippa's tactical innovations prove decisive in the actual battle. His lighter, more maneuverable ships equipped with improved artillery outfight Antony's heavier vessels, while Octavian's superior numbers gradually overwhelm Eastern resistance. Cleopatra's withdrawal from battle, whether treachery or tactical necessity, creates panic in Antony's fleet that transforms limited defeat into total catastrophe. Antony's pursuit of Cleopatra, rather than rallying his remaining forces, reveals how completely his judgment has been compromised by personal attachment. His abandonment of loyal troops who continue fighting in his name destroys his reputation among the professional soldiers who had followed him since Caesar's death. The mass desertions that follow demonstrate how quickly military loyalty evaporates when commanders appear to prioritize personal interests over their followers' welfare. Octavian's treatment of defeated enemies after Actium establishes precedents for imperial clemency. Unlike the prescriptions that followed earlier civil wars, he pardons most of Antony's supporters while incorporating their troops into his own armies. This policy serves both practical purposes, reducing resistance to his rule, and propaganda, goals demonstrating that his victory serves reconciliation rather than revenge. The siege of Alexandria provides dramatic conclusion to the Ptolemaic dynasty that had ruled Egypt since Alexander's conquest. Antony's suicide, falling on his sword when he believes Cleopatra has already died, represents the Roman military virtue of preferring death to dishonor. Cleopatra's more elaborate death by Aspite showcases Hellenistic theater while denying Octavian the propaganda value of displaying her in his triumph. Caesarion's execution eliminates the last potential rival to Octavian's position as Caesar's heir. The teenager as death reportedly ordered with the comment that two Caesars are too many demonstrates that Octavian's clemency has limits when his own position faces threat. This ruthless calculation will characterize his entire reign as he balances magnanimity with security concerns. The annexation of Egypt provides Octavian with resources that transform his political position. The Nile Valley's agricultural wealth makes Egypt Rome's richest province, while its administrative traditions offer models for governing the expanded empire. Most importantly, controlling Egyptian grain shipments gives Octavian leverage over the Roman masses that no rival can match. Octavian's return to Rome as sole master of the Mediterranean world requires careful management to avoid Caesar's fate. His triple triumph celebrating victories over Illyrians, Antony, and Cleopatra provides spectacular entertainment while demonstrating his military achievements. However, his gradual approach to constitutional change shows he has learned from his adoptive father's mistakes about moving too quickly toward monarchical power. The settlement of 27 BCE represents political genius disguised as constitutional restoration. By formally returning all powers to the Senate and people, while accepting the proconsular command over provinces containing most Roman legions, Octavian maintains real authority while appearing to restore republican government. His new name, Augustus, suggesting religious reverence rather than political dominance, symbolizes this careful balance between power and appearance. The Augustan Revolution succeeds because it addresses the fundamental problems that destroyed the Republic while maintaining familiar constitutional forms. The Principate provides the strong central authority necessary for governing an empire while preserving senatorial dignity and popular assemblies. Provincial administration becomes more efficient and less corrupt under imperial oversight, while maintaining traditional Roman methods. Augustus's domestic programs demonstrate how thoroughly he has absorbed Caesar's lessons about governing through popular support. His building projects transform Rome into a marble city worthy of world dominion while providing employment for masses of workers. His grain distributions ensure urban stability, while his veteran settlements create loyal populations throughout the empire. The moral legislation Augustus promotes reveals his understanding that political revolution requires cultural transformation. His laws encouraging marriage and childbearing among the elite address demographic concerns while reinforcing traditional family values. His support for religious revival demonstrates respect for ancestral customs while positioning himself as defender of Roman tradition against foreign corruption. The succession arrangements Augustus developed show his determination to avoid the power struggles that followed Caesar's death. His adoption of Tiberius provides clear constitutional continuity, while his cultivation of the Praetorian Guard ensures military support for imperial transition. The careful grooming of potential heirs demonstrates long-term planning that the Republic's annual magistracies could never provide. Augustus's reign establishes the template for Roman imperial government that will persist for centuries. His combination of military command, religious authority, and constitutional legitimacy creates a system flexible enough to adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining essential continuity. The Pax Augusta that emerges from his victory at Actium provides the Mediterranean world with unprecedented peace and prosperity. The transformation of Augustus from Octavian, the calculating teenager who emerged from Apollonia into the revered father of his country, represents one of history's most remarkable political metamorphoses. His early years reveal ruthless pragmatism that includes participation in proscriptions, manipulation of legal technicalities, and abandonment of allies when politically convenient. Yet his mature reign demonstrates genuine concern for Roman welfare and institutional stability that transcends mere personal ambition. This evolution reflects Augustus's growing understanding that sustainable power requires popular legitimacy rather than mere military dominance. His gradual abandonment of triumviral methods, the violence, extortion, and constitutional violations that characterized his rise, demonstrates remarkable political wisdom. The clemency that replaces proscription, the constitutional respect that supersedes legal manipulation, and the institutional building that transcends personal advantage all testify to Augustus's capacity for growth and adaptation. The cultural revolution that accompanies Augustus's political transformation creates new models for imperial authority that influence Western kingship for centuries. His patronage of artists, writers, and architects establishes precedents for enlightened rulership that combine political power with cultural sophistication. The Augustan literary circle, including Virgil, Horace, and Ovid, creates cultural monuments that rival any military conquest, while legitimizing imperial authority through artistic achievement. Augustus's personal relationships reveal the human dimensions behind his political success, while demonstrating how private choices serve public purposes. His marriage to Livia provides not merely dynastic alliance but intellectual partnership. Her political acumen and social skills complement his strategic vision, while her fertility concerns necessitate the complex adoption arrangements that ensure succession. Their relationship becomes a model for imperial marriage that balances personal affection with political necessity. The religious innovations Augustus promotes transform Roman spirituality while serving political consolidation. His revival of ancient priesthoods and restoration of neglected temples demonstrates respect for tradition while positioning himself as divinely favored leader. The imperial cult that gradually develops around his person, beginning with provincial worship and eventually encompassing Rome itself, creates new forms of political legitimacy that transcend traditional republican categories while maintaining recognizably Roman characteristics. Augustus, as management of potential rivals, reveals sophisticated understanding of how to neutralize opposition without creating martyrs or resentment. His treatment of surviving republicans offering honors and positions to those willing to serve while gradually marginalizing irreconcilable opponents demonstrates how successful autocrats can co-opt rather than crush alternative centers of authority. This approach ensures stability by incorporating talent while preventing the conspiracy formation that destroyed his adoptive father. Chapter 10. Imperial Reforms and Legacy. The marble city that Augustus bequeaths to posterity bears little resemblance to the chaotic metropolis Caesar knew. Where narrow streets once wound between crowded tenements, broad avenues now connect magnificent public buildings. The Forum of Augustus, with its temple to Mars altar honoring the god who avenged Caesar's murder, symbolizes how completely the first emperor has transformed both Rome's physical appearance and its governmental structure. Augustus' administrative revolution begins with the recognition that governing an empire requires professional bureaucracy rather than amateur annual magistrates. His creation of permanent departments for finance, correspondence, and judicial affairs establishes the institutional framework that will enable Roman government to function efficiently for centuries. The freedmen and equites who staff these offices bring commercial experience and administrative expertise that senatorial aristocrats often lack. The Praetorian Prefect emerges as the most powerful office in the new imperial hierarchy after Augustus himself. These commanders of the emperor's personal guard combine military authority with administrative responsibility, often serving as the emperor's representatives in sensitive negotiations. Their proximity to imperial power makes them both essential supporters and potential threats, a tension that will dominate imperial politics throughout the Principate. Provincial administration undergoes systematic reform as Augustus distinguishes between senatorial and imperial provinces. Peaceful territories like Asia and Africa remain under traditional governance by former magistrates, preserving senatorial dignity while reducing administrative burdens. Frontier regions requiring military oversight become imperial provinces governed by legates responsible directly to Augustus, ensuring unified command over Rome's armies. The legionary system that Augustus perfects represents the culmination of centuries of Roman military evolution. His standardization of equipment, training, and organization creates professional armies capable of sustained campaigning in any climate or terrain. The establishment of permanent bases along frontier rivers provides security while encouraging the Romanization of surrounding populations through trade and intermarriage. Augustus's management of the Roman economy demonstrates sophisticated understanding of imperial finance. His personal wealth, accumulated through Egyptian annexation and confiscations from defeated enemies, allows him to fund public works and military salaries without excessive taxation. The Arium Sanctus that he establishes provides emergency reserves, while his careful monitoring of provincial tribute ensures sustainable revenue streams. The census figures that Augustus proudly records reveal the demographic transformation of the Roman world under his rule. The citizen population grows from roughly 4 million at the Republic's end to nearly 5 million by his death. reflecting both territorial expansion and systematic grants of citizenship to deserving individuals and communities. This expansion of the citizen body creates stakeholders in imperial success throughout the Mediterranean world. Marriage legislation represents Augustus's most controversial domestic innovation. His laws penalizing celibacy and rewarding fertility among the upper classes address genuine concerns about demographic decline while reinforcing traditional family structures. The Julian laws on adultery and marriage create new criminal categories while establishing imperial authority over previously private relationships. Religious revival under Augustus serves both spiritual and political purposes. His restoration of neglected temples and revival of ancient priesthoods demonstrates respect for ancestral tradition while positioning himself as divinely favored leader. The secular games of 17 BCE, celebrating Rome's purification and renewal, provide spectacular affirmation of imperial legitimacy while connecting Augustus to Rome's mythical foundations. The literature that flourishes under Augustan patronage creates cultural monuments equal to any architectural achievement. Virgil's Aeneid transforms Caesar as descendant into the founder of Roman civilization, while prophesying eternal dominion for Augustus' dynasty. Horace's odes celebrate imperial virtue and achievement, while Livius' history demonstrates how republican discord led inevitably to monarchical restoration. Augustus's succession planning reveals his determination to establish hereditary monarchy while maintaining constitutional appearances. His adoption of Tiberius after the deaths of his preferred heirs demonstrates flexibility in personnel while maintaining dynastic continuity. The gradual grant of tribunician power and proconsular authority to his successor provides legal framework for peaceful transition. The German campaigns that dominate Augustus' later years expose the limits of Roman expansion while demonstrating imperial military capacity. Drusus's advances to the Elbe River extend Roman authority deep into Central Europe. Before his death ends the most promising phase of Germanic conquest. The Varian disaster of 09 CE 3 legions destroyed in the Teutoburg Forest forces strategic retrenchment, but fails to threaten overall imperial security. Augustus's building program transforms Rome into a showcase worthy of world empire. The theater of Marcellus, baths of Agrippa, and Pantheon provide entertainment and services for Rome's growing population while demonstrating imperial magnificence. The campus. Martis development creates new neighborhoods for the urban masses, while the Forum of Augustus provides space for judicial and commercial activities. The road network that Augustus expands and systematizes facilitates communication throughout the empire while enabling rapid military deployment. The Cursus Publicus Imperial Postal Service ensures that messages can travel from Britain to Syria in weeks rather than months. Milestone markers proclaiming distances to Rome reinforce the capital's centrality, while standardized construction techniques spread Roman engineering throughout provincial territories. Trade expansion under imperial peace creates unprecedented prosperity for merchants and artisans throughout the Mediterranean world. The elimination of piracy and reduction of customs barriers encourage commercial development, while Roman currency provides stable medium of exchange from Britain to Mesopotamia. Urban centers flourish as regional markets, while agricultural productivity increases through improved techniques and expanded cultivation. The legal system that Augustus develops provides framework for imperial governance while preserving local customs where possible. Roman citizenship carries specific privileges and obligations regardless of geographical location, while provincial law continues to govern local relationships. The praetor Peregrinus and his staff develop precedents for resolving disputes between citizens and foreigners that will influence jurisprudence for centuries. Educational opportunities expand throughout the empire as Romanization proceeds peacefully through cultural attraction rather than military coercion. Greek rhetorical schools train future administrators, while Latin literature spreads Roman values among provincial elites. The gradual adoption of Roman dress, architecture, and customs proceeds voluntarily as local populations recognize the advantages of imperial citizenship. Augustus, as personal example, establishes behavioral standards for future emperors while demonstrating how traditional Roman virtues can be adapted to monarchical circumstances. His modest lifestyle, accessibility to petitioners, and respect for constitutional forms provide template for successful imperial rule. His marriage to Livia showcases traditional family values, while his adoption practices demonstrate flexibility in dynastic planning. The Augustan settlement, as greatest achievement, lies in creating sustainable framework for governing a multicultural empire while preserving essential Roman characteristics. The Principate provides strong central authority when needed while maintaining local autonomy where possible. Imperial citizenship offers pathway to advancement for ambitious provincials while preserving meaningful distinction between rulers and subjects. Augustus' transformation of Caesar's revolutionary heritage into stable imperial system represents political genius equal to any military conquest. Where Caesar's reforms threaten traditional institutions, Augustus's changes preserve familiar forms while altering underlying realities. The constitutional monarchy he establishes provides Western civilization with governmental model that influences political development for centuries after Rome's fall. Chapter 11. The Eternal Legacy. 2,000 years after Caesar's death, his name echoes through corridors of power across the globe. Kaiser and Tsar derive directly from Caesar, while concepts of imperial authority, calendar reform, and urban planning continue to shape modern civilization. The question is not whether Caesar changed Rome, but whether any individual in human history has left a more profound and lasting impact on Western civilization. The constitutional legacy Caesar bequeaths through Augustus creates governmental templates that persist long after Rome's fall. The Holy Roman Empire explicitly claims Caesarian succession, while Byzantine emperors maintain Roman legal traditions for another 1,000 years. Medieval kingship adopts imperial symbolism and ceremonial, while Renaissance princes study Caesarian biographies for guidance in statecraft. Modern democratic institutions paradoxically owe significant debts to Caesar's innovations. His extension of citizenship to provincial populations establishes precedents for inclusive political participation that contrasts sharply with narrow city-state democracy. His administrative reforms demonstrate how large territories can be governed through professional bureaucracy rather than aristocratic amateurism. His attention to popular welfare shows how successful leaders must address mass concerns rather than elite preferences alone. The Julian calendar represents Caesar's most visible contemporary legacy. His reform of the Roman dating system, refined by Pope Gregory XIII in 1582, governs global timekeeping today. Every January, first celebration and leap year adjustment reminds humanity of Caesar's practical genius and his determination to impose rational order on chaotic tradition. Urban planning throughout the Western world reflects Caesarian and Augustan models. The forum concept influences public square design from medieval marketplaces to modern civic centers. Roman road networks provide templates for transportation infrastructure, while aqueduct engineering inspires municipal water systems. The integration of practical utilities with monumental architecture characterizes urban development from Renaissance Italy to contemporary capital cities. Legal systems worldwide incorporate principles developed during Caesar's dictatorship and Augustus's principate. The corpus juris civilis that Justinian compiles draws heavily on imperial precedents, while medieval canon law adapts Roman administrative practices. Modern concepts of citizenship, civil rights, and governmental authority reflect evolution of ideas first systematized under imperial rule. Military organization and strategy continue to reflect Roman innovations perfected during Caesar's campaigns. The combined arms approach that integrates infantry, cavalry, and artillery becomes standard for European warfare, while professional officer training adopts Roman emphasis on engineering and logistics. The concept of military discipline supporting political authority influences armies from Napoleon's Grande Army to modern national forces. Literary and historical traditions established by Caesar himself shape Western narrative conventions for centuries. His commentary create the template for military memoirs while establishing third-person objectivity as a rhetorical strategy. The biographical tradition that Plutarch and Suetonius develop in response to Caesar's career influences political writing from medieval chronicles to contemporary journalism. Educational curricula throughout Europe and America include Caesarian text as foundational reading for understanding classical civilization. His clear prose style makes him accessible to students, while his historical significance ensures continued relevance. Generations of schoolchildren encounter Caesar as their introduction to Latin literature and Roman history, perpetuating his influence on cultural development. The concept of charismatic leadership that Caesar embodies influences political theory from Machiavelli through Max Weber to contemporary social science. His combination of military genius, oratorical skill, and popular appeal creates a model for exceptional individuals who transcend normal institutional constraints. Democratic and authoritarian leaders alike study Caesarian techniques for mobilizing mass support and overcoming constitutional limitations. Caesar, as integration of diverse populations within Roman civilization, provides precedents for multicultural empire that influence both positive and negative developments in subsequent history. The Roman model inspires inclusive approaches to imperial governance, while also providing justification for cultural imperialism and forced assimilation. Modern debates about immigration, citizenship, and national identity often invoke Roman precedents established during Caesar's lifetime. The economic policies Caesar initiates, debt relief, land redistribution, public works employment, anticipate modern governmental responses to financial crisis and social inequality. His recognition that political stability requires addressing mass economic concerns influences everything from New Deal legislation to contemporary social welfare programs. The tension between fiscal responsibility and popular demands that Caesar navigates remains central to democratic governance. Technological innovations associated with Caesar's era continue to influence engineering and architecture. Roman concrete formulations inspire modern construction, while bridge and tunnel designs reflect classical precedents. The standardization of measurements and currency that imperial administration requires provides models for economic integration that influence everything from medieval trade to contemporary globalization. The propagandistic techniques Caesar pioneers, carefully crafted public image, strategic use of spectacle, manipulation of popular emotions, anticipate modern political communication. His understanding of how individual personality can be transformed into political brand influences campaign methodology, while his attention to visual symbolism shapes governmental ceremony and public architecture. Caesar's approach to religion and ideology demonstrates how successful leaders can adapt traditional beliefs to serve contemporary purposes without destroying their essential character. His reform of Roman religious practices, while maintaining their fundamental structure, provides a template for political modernization that preserves cultural continuity. This balance influences everything from constitutional monarchy to revolutionary movements that claim traditional legitimacy. The geographical scope of Caesar's influence extends far beyond territories he personally conquered. Roman law spreads to regions never under imperial control, while Latin vocabulary influences languages from Ireland to Romania. Architectural styles, agricultural techniques, and administrative practices spread through trade and cultural contact to areas that never experienced direct Roman rule. Contemporary political movements across the ideological spectrum invoke Caesarian precedents for legitimacy. Republicans condemn imperial authority while admiring republican virtue. Autocrats celebrate strong leadership while ignoring constitutional constraints. Populists praise attention to mass welfare while overlooking elite manipulation. This universal applicability testifies to the complexity and enduring relevance of Caesar's historical legacy. A scholarly tradition studying Caesar's career generates vast literature that influences fields from military history to political science. Academic analysis of his strategies, reforms, and ultimate failure provides insights applicable to contemporary challenges, while historical comparison with other transformative leaders deepens understanding of exceptional individual impact on social development. Caesar's ultimate legacy lies not in any single institution or innovation, but in demonstrating how individual genius can interact with historical forces to produce fundamental transformation. His career shows how personal ambition and public service can align to create lasting change, while warning of the dangers inherent in concentrating power in exceptional individuals. These lessons remain relevant as long as human societies struggle to balance effective governance with constitutional limitation, individual excellence with institutional stability, and progressive reform with cultural continuity. The architectural revolution that Caesar initiated and Augustus perfected continues to influence monumental construction worldwide. The Forum Julium, Caesar's first major building project, established the template for imperial forums that combined commercial, judicial, and ceremonial functions within unified architectural spaces. This integration of practical necessity with symbolic grandeur inspires everything from medieval cathedral complexes to modern government centers. The Basilica Julia, completed under Augustus but conceived during Caesar's dictatorship, demonstrates how Roman architects solved the problem of creating vast interior spaces for public assembly, innovations that influence Byzantine church design, Gothic cathedral construction, and contemporary arena architecture. Caesar's transformation of Roman engineering capabilities through his Gallic campaigns creates technological advances that ripple through subsequent centuries. The bridge-building techniques his legions perfected while crossing the Rhine established precedents for military engineering that influenced medieval fortification design and Renaissance military architecture. His siege works at Alesia showcase innovations in coordinated construction that anticipate modern project management while demonstrating how technical expertise can overcome seemingly impossible geographical obstacles. The financial instruments Caesar develops to fund his political career anticipate modern banking and credit systems. His ability to leverage future provincial revenues against present political needs demonstrates sophisticated understanding of debt financing that influences medieval Italian banking houses and early modern state finance. The public-private partnerships he arranges using private contractors for public works while guaranteeing payment through state resources establish precedents for infrastructure development that persist in contemporary governmental practice. Caesar's integration of intelligence gathering and propaganda distribution creates information networks that prefigure modern state communication systems. His systematic collection of data about Gallic tribes, Germanic peoples, and British communities establishes templates for ethnographic research while demonstrating how cultural knowledge can serve strategic purposes. The commentary's careful presentation of military campaigns as defensive necessities shows how governmental communication can shape public opinion through selective emphasis and rhetorical sophistication. The colonial policies Caesar initiates during his Gallic governorship establish precedents for territorial administration that influence European expansion for centuries. His combination of military conquest with cultural assimilation demonstrates how imperial powers can maintain control through voluntary adoption of metropolitan customs rather than purely coercive occupation. The veteran settlements he establishes in conquered territories create models for colonial development that influence everything from Spanish conquistador practices to British imperial administration. Caesar's approach to ethnic and religious diversity within expanding Roman territory anticipates modern multicultural governance while highlighting its inherent tensions. His respect for Gallic Druids, despite their human sacrifice practices, demonstrates pragmatic tolerance that serves political purposes while maintaining Roman moral superiority. His integration of Celtic nobles into Roman administrative structures shows how imperial systems can co-opt local elites while preserving cultural distinctiveness that serves imperial diversity. The economic policies Caesar implements during his brief dictatorship address structural inequalities that continue to challenge modern democratic societies. His debt relief measures recognize that excessive private indebtedness threatens social stability, while his land redistribution programs demonstrate governmental responsibility for ensuring broad-based prosperity. The public works employment he provides acknowledges that states must serve as employers of last resort during economic downturns, principles that influence everything from New Deal programming to contemporary stimulus spending. Caesar's transformation of Roman citizenship from ethnic birthright to earned privilege establishes precedents for inclusive nationalism that contrasts sharply with exclusive tribal identities. His extension of citizenship to Gallic communities demonstrates how political membership can transcend cultural boundaries while maintaining meaningful distinctions between rulers and subjects. This balance between inclusion and hierarchy influences constitutional development from medieval chartered towns to modern federal systems where multiple levels of citizenship coexist. The administrative innovations Augustus develops while implementing Caesar's vision create bureaucratic structures that persist throughout European governmental development. The creation of specialized departments for correspondence, finance, and judicial affairs establishes the functional differentiation that characterizes modern civil service while demonstrating how professional expertise can supplement traditional aristocratic governance. The career paths Augustus creates for administrative advancement anticipate modern merit-based promotion systems while maintaining aristocratic oversight that prevents bureaucratic autonomy. Augustus' census reforms and demographic monitoring establish precedents for state data collection that influence governmental statistical capacity for centuries. His systematic recording of citizen numbers, provincial populations, and economic output demonstrates how empirical information can guide policy decisions while providing accountability measures for administrative effectiveness. The standardized record-keeping procedures he mandates create templates for governmental documentation that influence everything from medieval royal chanceries to contemporary database management. The cultural policies Augustus promotes reveal sophisticated understanding of how political transformation requires ideological adaptation. His patronage of literature that celebrates imperial achievements while maintaining traditional Roman values demonstrates how governments can shape public discourse through selective support rather than direct censorship. The religious revival he sponsors shows how political leaders can strengthen their legitimacy by positioning themselves as defenders of ancestral customs, rather than revolutionary innovators. Augustus's marriage legislation addresses demographic challenges that continue to confront modern developed societies. His recognition that declining birth rates among educated elites threaten long-term social stability anticipates contemporary concerns about demographic transition, while demonstrating how governmental intervention in private relationships generates both compliance and resistance. The tax incentives and legal privileges he grants to families with multiple children establish precedents for pro-natalist policies that influence European population strategies into the 21st century. The succession mechanisms Augustus develops attempt to solve the fundamental problem of transferring power in systems where personal authority transcends institutional constraints. His combination of adoption, gradual responsibility transfer, and military loyalty cultivation creates templates for dynastic transition that influence everything from medieval kingship to modern authoritarian succession. The tension between merit-based selection and hereditary continuity that characterizes his approach reflects dilemmas that confront any system attempting to balance effectiveness with legitimacy. Caesar's influence on Western legal development extends far beyond the specific innovations of his dictatorship to encompass fundamental concepts about governmental authority and individual rights. His assertion that exceptional circumstances justify suspension of normal constitutional procedures establishes precedents for emergency powers that influence everything from medieval royal prerogatives to contemporary executive authority during crises. The legal theories that emerge from attempts to justify or condemn his actions create intellectual frameworks that shape constitutional thinking for centuries. The biographical tradition that emerges from attempts to understand Caesar's career influences historical writing and political analysis throughout Western intellectual development. Plutarch's comparative method, Suetonius's anecdotal approach, and Tacitus' psychological penetration established different models for analyzing exceptional individuals that influence everything from medieval chronicles to modern political biography. The tension between admiration for Caesar's achievements and condemnation of his methods reflects broader cultural ambivalence about the relationship between individual excellence and constitutional governance. Caesar's impact on military education and strategic thinking extends beyond specific tactical innovations to encompass fundamental approaches to warfare and politics. His demonstration that military success requires understanding local conditions, adapting to enemy capabilities, and maintaining troop morale creates precedents for professional officer training that influence European military academies for centuries. His integration of political objectives with military means establishes principles for strategic planning that persist in contemporary defense policy. The economic transformation that Caesar's conquests and Augustus' administration produce creates models for territorial development that influence European expansion worldwide. The combination of infrastructure investment, trade facilitation, and resource extraction that characterizes Roman provincial administration establishes templates for colonial economic policy that persist through early modern imperial systems. The balance between metropolitan advantage and provincial development that Roman policy achieves provides precedents for sustainable imperial governance that modern powers struggle to replicate. Caesar's transformation of Roman religious practices demonstrates how political leaders can adapt traditional beliefs to serve contemporary purposes while maintaining cultural continuity. His integration of conquered peoples deities into Roman pantheon shows how religious tolerance can serve political inclusion, while his assumption of divine honors reveals how exceptional achievement can transcend normal human categories. The precedents he establishes influence everything from medieval concepts of divine kingship to modern civil religion. The technological diffusion that Roman expansion under Caesar and Augustus facilitates spreads innovations throughout the Mediterranean world and beyond. Roman engineering techniques, agricultural practices, and manufacturing methods spread through trade networks and cultural contact to regions never under direct imperial control. The standardization of weights, measures, and currency that imperial administration requires creates economic integration that influences commercial development long after political unity dissolves. Caesar's approach to information control and public communication establishes precedents for governmental media management that persist in contemporary political practice. His careful cultivation of public image through architectural projects, ceremonial display, and literary patronage demonstrates how leaders can shape popular opinion through symbolic manipulation rather than direct coercion. The propaganda techniques he develops influence everything from medieval royal ceremony to modern campaign methodology. The social mobility that Caesar's career exemplifies and that Augustus' system institutionalizes creates precedents for merit-based advancement that contrasts sharply with purely hereditary status systems. The opportunities for provincial peoples to achieve Roman citizenship and political advancement through military service, administrative competence, or commercial success establish models for social integration that influence everything, from medieval urban development to modern immigration policy. Caesar, as legacy in urban planning and municipal administration, creates templates for city governance that persist throughout European development. His reorganization of Roman neighborhoods, standardization of building codes, and integration of public services demonstrate how central authority can improve urban living conditions while maintaining local autonomy. The municipal charters that Roman cities receive establish precedents for urban self-governance that influence medieval town development and modern local government. The international law concepts that emerge from Roman territorial expansion under Caesar and Augustus influenced diplomatic practice and legal theory for centuries. The distinction between Roman citizens, Latin allies, and foreign peoples creates hierarchical models for international relationships that persist in various forms through medieval and early modern treaty systems. The legal frameworks developed for governing diverse populations within unified imperial systems provide precedents for federal arrangements and international organizations. Caesar, as transformation of Roman military culture, creates professional standards and institutional practices that influence European armies throughout their development. His emphasis on engineering capabilities, logistical planning, and discipline training establishes precedents for military professionalization that persists through medieval knightly orders to modern officer corps. The loyalty systems he develops for maintaining troop cohesion demonstrate how personal bonds can supplement institutional authority in military organizations. The agricultural policies that Caesar initiates and Augustus systematizes address rural development challenges that continue to confront governmental authorities worldwide. The veteran settlement programs that provide land for retired soldiers while developing frontier territories establish models for combining social welfare with territorial development that influence everything from American homestead policies to contemporary rural development programs. The balance between private property rights and public land use that Roman policy achieves provides precedents for sustainable resource management. Caesar's approach to cultural preservation within expanding political systems demonstrates how imperial powers can maintain unity while respecting diversity. His encouragement of local languages, customs, and religious practices within Roman legal frameworks establishes precedents for multicultural governance that contrast sharply with assimilationist policies. The selective adoption of useful practices from conquered peoples shows how imperial systems can benefit from cultural exchange rather than purely exploitive relationships. The fiscal innovations that Caesar and Augustus developed to fund imperial administration create precedents for public finance that influence governmental revenue systems for centuries. Their combination of direct taxation, customs duties, and resource extraction demonstrates how large territorial states can generate sustainable income while maintaining economic growth. The distinction between imperial revenues and senatorial finances establishes precedents for separating executive and legislative budget authority that influence constitutional development. Caesar, as legacy in educational policy and intellectual development, shapes Western learning for centuries through both direct influence and institutional precedents. His support for rhetorical training, historical writing, and scientific investigation demonstrates how governmental patronage can advance knowledge while serving political purposes. The libraries, schools, and research institutions that flourish under imperial support establish models for public education funding that persist in various forms through medieval monasticism to modern university systems. The diplomatic innovations that Caesar develops during his Gallic campaigns and that Augustus systematizes throughout the empire create precedents for international relations that influence European politics for centuries. The combination of military deterrence, economic incentives, and cultural attraction that characterizes Roman foreign policy establishes templates for peaceful expansion that contrast with purely coercive imperialism. The alliance systems that integrate diverse peoples within Roman hegemony provide models for confederation and federation that influence everything from medieval leagues to modern international organizations. Caesar's revolutionary approach to time and calendar reform represents one of his most enduring practical legacies, fundamentally altering how human civilization organizes temporal experience. The chaos of the late Republican calendar, manipulated by pontifices for political advantage and increasingly divorced from seasonal reality, reflected the broader governmental dysfunction that Caesar sought to remedy. His consultation with Alexandrian astronomers and adoption of the Egyptian solar year demonstrates his characteristic combination of practical problem-solving with intellectual sophistication. The Julian calendar, as introduction in 46 BCE, required not merely technical adjustment, but massive cultural adaptation throughout the Roman world. Traditional festivals, legal proceedings, and agricultural practices all required realignment with the new temporal framework. Caesar's decision to extend that year to 445 days, creating the Year of Confusion, demonstrates his willingness to accept short-term disruption for long-term rationalization. This precedent for comprehensive reform, despite immediate inconvenience, influences everything from Gregorian calendar adoption to modern metric system implementation. The social implications of calendar reform extend far beyond mere chronological convenience to encompass fundamental questions about governmental authority over cultural practices. Caesar's assumption of responsibility for temporal regulation establishes precedents for state standardization that influence everything from medieval royal control over weights and measures to contemporary international coordination of time zones. The resistance his reforms initially encountered from traditionalists prefigures similar conflicts between modernization and cultural preservation throughout subsequent history. Caesar's linguistic legacy through Latin's transformation into the imperial administrative language creates cultural unity that survives political fragmentation for centuries. His extension of Roman education and legal proceedings throughout conquered territories spreads Latin literacy among provincial elites while preserving local languages for popular use. This bilingual approach to imperial governance establishes precedents for linguistic policy that influence everything from medieval scholarly Latin to contemporary international English. The standardization of Latin grammar and vocabulary that imperial administration requires creates the foundation for Romance language development throughout Europe. Caesar's own literary style, praised by Cicero for its elegance and clarity, establishes models for administrative prose that influence governmental communication for centuries. The legal terminology, military commands, and bureaucratic procedures that spread through Roman expansion provide common vocabulary that facilitates communication across cultural boundaries. Caesar's transformation of Roman military logistics creates organizational innovations that influence supply chain management throughout subsequent military and commercial development. His systematic approach to provisioning armies during extended campaigns demonstrates understanding of resource planning that anticipates modern operations research. The supply depots, transportation networks, and inventory controls his quartermaster corps, develops established precedents for military administration that persist through medieval warfare to contemporary defense logistics. The medical and engineering corps that Caesar's armies require during Gallic campaigns create professional specializations that influence civilian technical development. Roman military medicine, refined through battlefield experience, establishes surgical techniques and pharmaceutical practices that influence medieval monastic healing and Renaissance medical education. The engineering expertise developed for siege warfare and fortification construction transfers to civilian infrastructure projects that transform urban development throughout the empire. Caesar's approach to veteran settlement and agricultural development creates models for rural planning that influence land use policy for centuries. His systematic provision of farms for retired soldiers addresses both social welfare needs and territorial security requirements, while demonstrating how governmental intervention can improve agricultural productivity. The drainage projects, road construction, and market town development that accompany veteran settlements establish precedents for comprehensive rural development that influence everything from medieval village planning to contemporary agricultural policy. The demographic transformation that Caesar's policies facilitate throughout the Roman world creates precedents for population management and integration that continue to challenge modern governmental authorities. His extension of citizenship rights to deserving individuals and communities establishes merit-based criteria for political inclusion that contrast sharply with purely ethnic or geographic qualifications. The balance between maintaining Roman cultural identity and accommodating provincial diversity provides models for multicultural citizenship that influence contemporary immigration and naturalization policies. Caesar's innovations in public entertainment and cultural programming demonstrate sophisticated understanding of how governments can build popular support through leisure activities rather than merely economic benefits. His gladiatorial games, theatrical performances, and public celebrations establish precedents for state-sponsored entertainment that influence everything from medieval court festivities to modern cultural policy. The careful balance between providing spectacle and maintaining social order shows how popular culture can serve political purposes while preserving traditional values. The architectural innovations that Caesar initiates through his building program establish design principles that influence monumental construction throughout Western civilization. His integration of Greek artistic refinement with Roman engineering capability creates synthetic approaches to public architecture that combine aesthetic sophistication with practical functionality. The Forum Julium's coordination of commercial, judicial, and ceremonial spaces within unified architectural schemes provides templates for civic design that influence everything from medieval cathedral complexes to contemporary urban planning. Caesar's approach to religious policy and ceremonial innovation demonstrates how political leaders can adapt traditional practices to serve contemporary purposes while maintaining cultural legitimacy. His assumption of pontifical authority allows him to reform religious calendar and ritual while positioning himself as defender rather than destroyer of ancestral customs. The precedents he establishes for integrating political authority with religious leadership influence everything from medieval concepts of divine kingship to contemporary civil religion. The economic policies that Caesar implements during his dictatorship address structural inequalities and market failures that continue to challenge governmental authorities worldwide. His debt relief measures recognize that excessive private indebtedness can threaten social stability, while his price controls demonstrate governmental responsibility for ensuring affordable necessities. The public works employment he provides acknowledges that states must serve as economic stabilizers during periods of private sector weakness, principles that influence everything from New Deal programming to contemporary fiscal stimulus policies. Caesar's transformation of Roman legal procedures and judicial administration creates precedents for court organization and criminal justice that influence European legal development for centuries. His streamlining of legal processes while maintaining due process protections demonstrates how efficiency and fairness can be balanced within judicial systems. The legal aid provisions he establishes for poor defendants and the standardization of penalties for similar crimes establish precedents for equal justice that influence everything from medieval canon law to modern constitutional jurisprudence. The intelligence networks that Caesar develops during his Gallic campaigns create organizational models for information gathering and strategic planning that influence military and civilian intelligence services throughout subsequent history. His systematic collection of data about enemy capabilities, geographical conditions, and political relationships demonstrates how empirical knowledge can serve strategic purposes. The communication systems he establishes for coordinating widely dispersed forces provide precedents for command and control structures that persist in contemporary military and corporate organization. Caesar's innovations in siege warfare and fortification design create tactical and technological precedents that influence military engineering for centuries. The circumvallation techniques perfected at Alesia demonstrate how engineering expertise can overcome numerical disadvantages while showcasing Roman organizational capabilities. The artillery innovations his campaigns require establish precedents for mechanical warfare that influence everything from medieval castle design to Renaissance military architecture. The environmental policies that Caesar's administration implements address resource management challenges that continue to confront governmental authorities worldwide. His forest conservation measures in Gaul recognize that sustainable resource extraction requires long-term planning, while his agricultural improvement programs demonstrate how governmental intervention can increase productivity without depleting soil fertility. The water management projects he initiates establish precedents for public utility development that influence everything from medieval mill construction to contemporary environmental policy. Caesar's approach to provincial taxation and revenue generation creates fiscal models that balance governmental needs with economic growth requirements. His systematic assessment of provincial resources while maintaining incentives for local productivity demonstrates sophisticated understanding of public finance principles. The distinction between tribute obligations and voluntary contributions that his policies establish provides precedents for federal taxation, systems that influence everything from medieval royal revenues to contemporary intergovernmental fiscal relations. The educational innovations that Caesar supports through his patronage of scholars and libraries create institutional precedents for governmental support of learning that persist throughout Western intellectual development. His encouragement of historical writing, geographical research, and literary production demonstrates how political leaders can advance knowledge while serving their own interests. The research institutions that flourish under imperial patronage establish models for public education funding that influence everything from medieval monastic schools to modern university systems. Caesar's legacy in maritime policy and naval development creates precedents for governmental regulation of waterways and international commerce that influence European expansion for centuries. His coordination of Mediterranean shipping while suppressing piracy demonstrates how central authority can facilitate trade while maintaining security. The port development projects he initiates establish models for infrastructure investment that combine public benefit with commercial advantage precedents that influence everything from medieval town charters to contemporary transportation policy. The medical and public health innovations that emerge from Caesar's military campaigns create precedents for governmental responsibility for population welfare that influence European health policy development. The field hospitals, surgical training, and pharmaceutical research that military necessity requires established medical practices that transfer to civilian healthcare. The sanitation standards and disease prevention measures that Roman armies implement provide models for public health administration that influence everything from medieval urban planning to contemporary epidemiological policy. Caesar's transformation of Roman manufacturing and craft production through his support for technological innovation creates precedents for governmental encouragement of industrial development. His standardization of military equipment while encouraging technical improvement demonstrates how central coordination can increase efficiency without stifling innovation. The guild systems that develop under imperial patronage establish models for professional organization that influence everything from medieval craft associations to contemporary trade regulation. The cultural exchange policies that Caesar facilitates through his territorial expansion create precedents for managing diversity within unified political systems that continue to challenge modern governmental authorities. His encouragement of artistic, literary, and philosophical exchange between Roman and provincial cultures demonstrates how imperial systems can benefit from cultural diversity rather than merely imposing metropolitan standards. The selective adoption of useful practices from conquered peoples shows how successful governance requires adaptation and learning rather than rigid adherence to traditional methods. Caesar, as ultimate transformation of Roman political culture from republican competition to imperial coordination, represents one of history's most successful institutional adaptations to changing circumstances. His recognition that traditional city-state governance could not manage territorial empire demonstrates analytical capabilities that transcend his immediate political interests. The constitutional framework he establishes through his reforms and that Augustus perfects provides governmental stability that enables unprecedented cultural and economic flourishing throughout the Mediterranean world. The precedent Caesar establishes for exceptional individual leadership within institutional constraints continue to influence contemporary discussions about democratic governance and executive authority. His demonstration that personal charisma and political skill can overcome constitutional limitations while serving public interests provides both inspiration and warning for modern democratic societies. The tension between effective leadership and constitutional restraint that his career exemplifies remains central to political theory and practice in democratic systems worldwide. As we stand in the ruins of the Roman Forum today, surrounded by broken columns and weathered stones, we witness the enduring power of one man's vision to reshape civilization itself. The tourist who photographs the spot where Caesar fell, the student who reads his commentaries on distant battlefields, the politician who invokes his memory, all participate in a legacy that spans 2 millennia and shows no signs of diminishing. Julius Caesar changed Rome forever by recognizing that the ancient world was dying and having the audacity to birth a new one from its ruins. The republic that governed a Mediterranean city-state could not survive the responsibilities of world empire. Traditional institutions designed for citizen farmers buckled under the weight of vast wealth and diverse populations. The mixed constitution that had served Rome for centuries proved inadequate for the challenges of governing 3 continents. Where others saw only crisis and decline, Caesar perceived opportunity and possibility. His conquest of Gaul demonstrated Roman military superiority while providing the resources necessary for a political transformation. His crossing of the Rubicon destroyed constitutional government while clearing the way for more effective authority. His dictatorship concentrated power sufficiently to implement reforms that the republic's divided institutions could never have achieved. Caesar's assassination confirmed rather than refuted his analysis of Roman needs. The conspirators who killed him to restore the republic succeeded only in unleashing civil wars that made his rule seem moderate by comparison. Their failure proved that Rome required the strong central authority Caesar had provided, while their methods ensured that his successors would be more ruthless and less constrained by republican sentiment. The imperial system that emerged from Caesar's legacy governed the Western world for centuries while influencing political development long after Rome's fall. The Augustan settlement provided stability and prosperity that the Republic's final century had conspicuously lacked. Provincial integration created a Mediterranean civilization that preserved Greek learning, Roman law, and local traditions within a unified imperial framework. Modern democracy owes debts to Caesar that its practitioners rarely acknowledge. his extension of citizenship beyond ethnic and geographical boundaries established precedents for inclusive political participation. His attention to popular welfare demonstrated how successful governments must address mass concerns rather than elite preferences alone. His administrative innovations showed how large territories could be governed through professional expertise rather than aristocratic amateurism. The calendar we consult daily, the legal principles governing our courts, the urban planning shaping our cities, all bear traces of Caesarian innovation refined through centuries of development. The roads connecting continents, the aqueducts supplying fresh water, the public buildings serving civic functions all reflect Roman engineering that Caesar's conquests made possible and his successors perfected. Yet Caesar's legacy includes warnings as well as achievements. His career demonstrates how republican institutions can be overwhelmed by individuals who combine exceptional ability with unlimited ambition. His success shows how popular support can be mobilized to overcome constitutional constraints, while his fate reveals the vulnerable support can be mobilized to overcome constitutional constraints, while his fate reveals the dangers inherent in concentrating too much power in any single person. The lesson of Caesar's transformation of Rome extends beyond ancient history to illuminate contemporary challenges. In an age when democratic institutions face pressure from technological change, economic inequality, and cultural division, Caesar's career offers both inspiration and caution. His ability to adapt traditional forms to serve new purposes suggests possibilities for peaceful reform, while his ultimate reliance on force warns of revolution's dangers. The globalized world of the 21st century faces challenges remarkably similar to those confronting Caesar's Rome. How can diverse populations be integrated into unified political systems? How can traditional institutions adapt to serve expanded responsibilities? How can individual excellence be encouraged while preventing the concentration of power that threatens constitutional government? Caesar's answers to these questions, citizenship extension, administrative professionalization, charismatic leadership, remain relevant even when his methods prove unacceptable. Perhaps Caesar's greatest achievement lies in demonstrating that historical inevitability is a myth created by those who lack vision and courage to change what seems unchangeable. The Roman Republic's collapse was not predetermined by impersonal forces beyond human control, but resulted from specific individuals making particular choices in response to concrete challenges. Caesar's willingness to cross the Rubicon literally and figuratively shows how individual decision-making can redirect the course of civilization itself. The marble city Augustus built from Caesar's revolutionary foundation endured for centuries as the capital of Western civilization. Its laws governed Europe long after its legions departed. Its language provided vocabulary for scholarship and diplomacy. Its architectural models inspired builders from medieval cathedrals to modern capitals. The imperial system Caesar's career made necessary proved more durable than the republic he destroyed, more adaptive than the institutions he replaced, more successful than any government the ancient world had previously known. Standing where Caesar fell, we witness both the fragility and resilience of human achievement. The man whose vision reshaped the Western world died helpless on a Senate House floor, victim of smaller minds who mistook personal ambition for historical analysis. Yet his legacy survived their opposition. His reforms outlasted their restoration attempts. His name became synonymous with supreme authority in languages he never heard spoken by peoples he never knew existed. Julius Caesar changed Rome forever because he possessed a rare combination of insight to recognize what needed changing, courage to attempt what seemed impossible, and genius to succeed where others had failed. His story reminds us that history belongs not to abstract forces or institutional momentum, but to individuals, willing to stake everything on their vision of what the future should become. In an age that often feels overwhelmed by challenges beyond any single person's ability to address, Caesar His career stands as permanent testimony to the transformative power of exceptional individuals who refuse to accept the world as they find it. The die he cast at the Rubicon continues rolling through the corridors of power, the chambers of parliament, and the dreams of anyone who believes that tomorrow need not resemble yesterday. That, perhaps, is Julius Caesar's most enduring gift to humanity: the knowledge that one person, armed with vision and willing to risk everything, can indeed change the world forever.